welcome to our digital strategy video series in partnership with digital experts Project and security and identity management providers OKTA. In each video, we'll be discussing a different element of digital strategy, from building a roadmap to operating ambitiously within your means. A digital strategy is important to charities, allowing them to select the digital tools and skills they need to improve performance and processes, ultimately achieving more impact. A digital strategy specifies the direction your charity wants to take, using digital to complement your overall vision for the future. In this video, we are joined by Claire Bloor, CEO of Somerset and Avon Rape and Sexual Abuse Support, to discuss the importance of prioritizing service users in your digital strategies. Hi, Claire. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure to welcome you for this short interview. If you could tell us a little bit more about your digital strategy, what this means for your organizations, and when.
So we began working with the Project pre-pandemic, which feels like a lifetime ago.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So I went to a workshop that CAPT was running on the importance of a digital strategy, the importance of thinking about your digital tools as an organization, and it really opened my eyes to where we were at in terms of we were using a lot of things. We didn't really know why or how successful those tools were being. And we'd also not considered, I think, the impact of those digital tools on the survivors that we work with in terms of those experiencing sexual violence. So we really wanted to do a little bit more work with internally around what that looked like for us and shape something into more of a strategic approach to digital work. And then the pandemic hit, and we realized that a lot of the face-to-face work we were doing was no longer going to be viable, and we had to really quickly change up our digital action and digital strategy within the organization. So we worked really closely with Project to bring in a web chat service for survivors, because we realized that people were going to be stuck at home, and actually it wouldn't necessarily be safe for people who are experiencing rape and sexual abuse and potentially domestic abuse to be using our helpline and having long calls. So what options could we offer to people? And what Project did for us was they allowed us to really think from the user's perspective. So not what did we want this tool to look like, but what would actually somebody using this tool
would want.
And I think we get to a very different place than we would have done had we not had their support through that process and really done that user testing and had that insight into who the user was. And we've taken that a bit more through our whole digital processes in our organization to properly think about the end user rather than think about what we want to get out there.
Exactly. That's really interesting. And obviously you covered them a little bit, but would you mind giving a little bit more details about your specific aims for changing the way you were using digital? You mentioned that you were using several platforms, but not really sure why or how.
Yeah, so there was a couple of things for us. I think one of the big things was that we were seeing have seen a massive increase in demand, unfortunately, for our services. There's more people coming forward when they've experienced sexual violence needing support. And we realized that we could keep growing services indefinitely, and actually maybe it would have really good impact for those people, but it wasn't going to solve the problem. And we don't expect to solve the problem. But what we did realize is that we could have impact in different ways. And actually, we realized there's some people who were never going to want to come to a service at all. And what they would need from us is more access to our information digitally. So whether that was through our website. So thinking more of the tools that we were offering as services in their own right. So we really wanted to revamp our website, which we did a huge piece of work with Project again on. We really wanted to bring in this web chat service because we knew that was a real digital service that was going to make a massive difference. For our staff team internally, we needed to really think about how we were using the products and tools. So we were using a lot of different free tools, but they weren't really free because they were taking so much time and resource, and we didn't have a clear strategy for why we were using anything when. So we looked at everything we were using, we mapped it out. There was so many, it was ridiculous. And we mapped that out and looked at actually, what's working well in those tools? What do we want to invest in maybe buying the upgraded version of? Because actually
getting a little bit of money.
It gives us a bit more. And really consider every time we bought in a new tool, what we would use it for and why, because we had bought in just before I started, actually, they had brought in a new client management system, so client data management. So it's for all our survivors. And we just hadn't done that piece of work around understanding what we actually needed to get out of that system. So we had a system come online that didn't actually, it wasn't fit for purpose in terms of even getting the data out that we needed to report on. And so they were very patient with us, but we had to do a lot of kind of retrofitting of that information, which took a lot of time and effort and a lot more challenge for the staff team who are trying to use it, because it wasn't innovative, it didn't work for them. So now when we think about a digital tool that we're going to implement, we really consider, what do we need to get out of this? What's the end point for this? What kind of strategy we have in terms of how we're going to implement it into the team? And yeah, what are we using it for? So just being a lot more clear in terms of what digital can do for us and how.
Absolutely, from the outset, because yeah, it's not because it's a digital tool that it will necessarily work the right way for your organization. So yes, a very good point. And what was or were the most important considerations for the successful development and implementation of your digital strategy?
So I think for us, there was a financial consideration. So what, what would either make us more efficient, at a decent price point for us, because we know as a charity we don't have unlimited funding, so we can't just implement big projects. We really needed to kind of get the day-to-day basics right. So we migrated to Microsoft 365, and we migrated to the cloud and all that other good stuff, and did some work with Dot Project around what that migration needed to look like so that it could be really useful, because that's what we use all day, every day. And as I said, we also really thought about what's going to benefit our staff in terms of their work with survivors and service users. So what did we need? So what was going to be the key things that would make that work more efficient and effective and easier for people, and then support survivors to kind of get what they need out of the service, rather than putting up any digital barriers. So it was those sort of elements for us that we really thought about when we're thinking about what the strategic approach should be. And then, how long were things going to take, what things were going to cost, and what the timeline was for implementing them.
Absolutely, yes. So quite a few different considerations, but the most important being obviously what your budget allows you to do. Yeah. And what has been the biggest lesson that you've learned when creating your digital strategy?
I think for me, there's been two things that I've found really massive for us. So first of all, it was actually thinking about, what's a free tool really mean to you, and when's it worth investing money and having the tool that works for you, rather than trying to use loads of free ones that don't work, and kind of streamlining that so that people know what tools we're using and why. And then I think the other thing was about impact. So the fact that actually service delivery looks different now for us than it did 5 years ago. There's so much more online service. We have a whole online group work program now that we weren't set up to deliver well 5 years. We wouldn't have been able to deliver 5 years ago, and the impact that that's having for people who are socially isolated, and for service users who couldn't get into us physically, means that we have so much more reach within the community. So just not being, I guess what that means for me is that digital it's not an add-on, and actually it's just, it brings more effectiveness to our work rather than replacing something that we're doing. So we still do our in-person work, but we use digital to enhance what we're doing, and that's been a real positive learning for me. It doesn't have to be scary, it can be really enhancing.
Absolutely. But yeah, that's really inspiring. And what advice would you give other organizations looking to prioritize service delivery when creating a digital strategy?
So I think thinking about actually how someone's going to access it. So and I think for us, one of the exciting parts was when we did the web chat piece of work with Dot Project. I now have people in my team who are doing wireframes, who didn't know what a wireframe was beforehand. So really upskilling the staff so they feel confident. And so when we then did our website redesign, we were able to do a lot more work ourselves. So I think getting some really good support from someone like Dot Project who can help you and build capacity in your organization is really important. And then really thinking about not what you want to impart, but what it's actually going to feel like for someone. So we did loads of user testing, loads and loads of it with different types of users. So we do a lot of work with people with learning disabilities. We wanted to ensure it was accessible for them. We do a lot of work with people from the global majority. So we wanted to ensure it was accessible from a language perspective. We do, we work with people who are in trauma. So we need these tools to work for people when they're experiencing trauma, and not to feel overwhelming. So really thinking about that, and not just being like, we need to get this information out there we need to really think about how it's going to be received on the other end. So that was the big thing.
Big thing. Yeah, very, very, very interesting. And yeah, I love how you had a user-centered approach in as part of a digital strategy. So that's really exciting. Thank you very much, Claire, for your time. And thank to all of you for watching this video in partnership with our friends at Dot Project and OKTA. Make sure to look out for more videos in this series. We will be uncovering more about digital strategy, how charities can make it work for them, and we'll link them below. Thank you for watching.